This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Welcome to Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Seth Merrow of Equidaily.com, Steve Bick of Sirius and XM's At the Races. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning.
As I noted earlier, it's nice that spring has started already.
It's January. I was thinking the same thing, driving down. January thaw, and I'm watching, driving from Washington County down. 32, 36, 38, 40, 42, as it just kept going up and up and up. Nice.
And the warm temperatures had a detrimental, the cold temperatures, the snow have had a detrimental effect on racing. The warm temperatures. And as I said earlier, it's the change in the temperatures that makes it so tough for track maintenance. So over the past couple of weeks, you get the freezing temperatures and then the thaw and the freeze and the thaw. And so track conditions at Laurel and then fog at Aqueduct yesterday. But
Laurel, they said the tractors were sinking into the racetrack, and they couldn't even groom the racetrack to even seal it. Is how soft it had gotten because it thawed so quickly. And then, of course, yesterday, the fog, the jocks came back to the room and said they couldn't see literally feet in front of them. I mean, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and a little bit of controversy there. Some of the trainers. I'm surprised that the trainer quoted, I think it was Jeremiah Engelhardt, I think it was the Grenig piece, saying, gee, they should have gone to the New York Racing Association. Maybe something could have been worked out. Because I guess it's jocks go to the stewards, and the stewards then made the decision. I'm surprised there isn't like a set protocol. This is how it happens that everybody agrees on. Jockeys, trainers, owners, and so when a decision is made, they've gone through the protocol that everybody agrees with, and there would be no controversy.
No, the jocks say it's unsafe, and the jocks aren't comfortable. Day over. And that is always the bottom line.
And you can understand that, but I'm just wondering why there isn't, as I say, a protocol that everybody agrees on, that when the decision is made, there is no controversy after that. It's kind of funny. It's talking about weather, and this is going back to the cold weather. I think we have a screenshot the other day. Really a freak, scary accident at Friday at Freehold, and you can see there, and you can find the video online, and I was reluctant to have the guys pull up the video because it's kind of disturbing. I mean, what happens here is the Freehold race started on Friday. The pace car does the traditional thing, goes out to the outer rail, and then just is going to drive along, and lost control because of icy conditions. And subsequently, right after that, the pace car comes down. The lead horse makes it by, but the rest of the horses run right into the pace car. Really, it looked like carnage. Luckily, all the horses got out. The drivers, for the most part, got out okay. I guess there were some bruises. Cat Mancy
was badly
a
hurt.
Punctured lung and some broken ribs. Yeah. So it looked far more horrific than it was, and that's why I say I was reluctant to pull up the video because it is kind of. I think if you were there live, it had to be absolutely horrifying, or watched it live. But subsequently, the word again, horses and most of the guys out with bruises, but Mancy again with the punctured lung and the broken ribs. But a freak accident.
Well, I guess that car. Somebody, I was reading some comments on one of the Jersey websites on NewJersey.com, and somebody, I guess, could tell what kind of a car the pace car was, and said it was rear wheel drive, and that couldn't have been so advantageous. And I guess temperature wise, it was they said it was 38 degrees at the time, and so they were surprised that if it was an icy situation or if it just the thing fishtailed, and it was unbelievable and when you see people that have been watching harness racing for 50 years say they've never seen anything like it. That tells you, how freakish this was. Luckily, I mean, how the horses were okay, especially that two-horse, is unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, if people want to watch it, there are links to the video. I have a link to a story.
If you like that kind of gruesome,
because it is. It's horrific to watch, but the video is out there. But it was an absolutely freak accident. Also have some video before we get to the news. I wanted to get your opinion. I showed it on the Handicappers Report the other day, going back to the middle of the week, a race down at Tampa. We're going to watch the head-on shot, 7th race, January 8th at Tampa. Watch the horse on the rail in the white cap. This is the eventual winner. As they get to the gap, this is the number 2 horse. This horse comes out, and bothers what wound up to be the second place finisher right outside the number 9 horse. But you can watch the horses behind. It's a chain reaction. Now the horse gets to the gap, and obviously there's a reaction to the gap, and the horse comes out 5, 6, 7 pats.
It's not a reaction to I think it's Louis Garcia hitting him left-handed.
He continues to hit him left-handed, but I think when he gets to the gap, it's even more prominent. He comes up here, and that's right about where it really starts. And there was a claim of foul. There was a claim of foul behind, a claim of foul from the second place finisher, a claim of foul behind as well. And just look at how far out he goes. Now, the Tampa Bay stewards looked at this and looked at this and looked at this a long time and then left it up. How do they leave this up?
It's impossible.
How do you leave that up?
It's utterly impossible. And Michael Wright, the trainer of Bump Bump, the 8, had to be apoplectic here. Gary Boulanger, aboard the runner-up, coming down from Woodbine, hadn't run since November. And if people think, oh, they didn't hit, they don't have to hit. You're taking a path away from the horse. It's called herding. And a horse that is trying to go forward, when there's somebody leaning in front of him, don't think, oh, he wasn't going by anyway. He was going by. He couldn't go by because that horse is making it impossible for him. We talk about this mostly with Castellano because he's the most egregious herder there is. But this one is so obvious, and it's one of the reasons, frankly, I don't play Tampa a lot. I'll play on Sam Davis Day maybe, and on Tampa Bay Derby Day. Years ago, when we used to have Tampa Tuesday and we did the radio on the afternoons, they had a situation behind the gate where a horse basically reared and flipped. They shove him in the gate. Then he rears again as the gates open. The assistant starter's got he's got his hand, and they didn't call for a non-starter. It was, and I said to myself, if this is the way they're going to operate, I don't want anything to do. And Tampa seems to have, this kind of bugaboo a lot, and that's kind of one of the reasons I stay away.
This one to me, and I had no dog in the fight in this race, but I was watching it live on the computer as they were replaying, and I thought, and again, there was a chain reaction. There was a claim behind too for a horse that I think it was the eventual third place finisher. There was a claim on that one, and that horse, there was some movement, and you could have made some decisions there as well. But that became a little more complicated. But the winner was a no-brainer. That was absolutely a no-brainer. All right, let's turn to some of the news of the past week. Just before we do anything, I wanted to tip my cap. It was announced Jenny Reese, who certainly a friend of ours, been on our show before, the horse racing columnist and writer for the Louisville Courier-Journal, named the Kentucky Sports Writer of the Year this year. So, yeah, hats off to Jenny Reese. Also, news this week, the Eclipse finalists were announced. Horse of the Year, Mucho Macho Man, Will Take Charge, Wise Dan, the top 3 finalists in there. I think the surprise there was maybe Game On Dude, left out of that mix. But you would have to think it's coming down to Mucho Macho Man or Wise Dan there. So maybe in the third spot, it was just juggling up. And I think that's the case in a few of these categories. For the most part, the top 3 make sense. A couple of categories where maybe the horse that's probably the third on the list is a little bit of a head scratcher. But your thoughts on the finalists?
Well, I'm going to go back to my gigantic complaint about the way this thing was handled. This was a supplement that was sent out to the Eclipse voters. And it's assembled by members of each of the 3 organizations that put out the Eclipse Awards, which is the NTRA and the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters, which I'm a member of, and the DRF. They put this together, and it's got basically the PPs of the obvious candidates, the major stake winners and the horses that figure into the discussions in each of these categories, except in the case of some of the horses that were omitted from this thing. And that includes authenticity. And authenticity, for those that certainly were around New York, saw her win the Shoe V, finish second in the Personal Ensign and in the Ogden Phipps. She won 2 graded stakes on the year. She ran 9 times, was on the board every single time, made $835,000, second only to Royal Delta, and yet doesn't get included in this thing. And then, so what is that? What happens then? The voters that obviously aren't paying attention to the racing all year long, they end up putting the laughable, joyful victory, who was a farce, and Tismis Sue, who you could argue belonged on the list third. Royal Delta, Authenticity, and Tismis Sue was the obvious three best older fillies and mares, particularly on the distaff side when it comes to the main track. The fact that the voters didn't look either at the PPs or see, at least in the company lines, just because Authenticity wasn't in this brochure, the fact that people weren't aware or did enough work to see that Authenticity was the second best, not that she was going to be the champion, but she deserved to be second here behind Royal Delta. So it's a litmus test on who's paying attention. There's certain categories where there were 4 or 5 candidates, Seth, that had to fit in 3 slots. Okay. Honor Code gets squeezed out of the 2-year-old boys. Maybe My Conquistador gets squeezed out of the 2-year-old girls. Mike Smith, arguably, should have been a finalist, and a lot of people voted for him first in jockey, but he had to go up against Stevens, Castellano, and Rosario. So there are places where you can argue this isn't arguable. And it puts, to me, just sort of a disdain and a bit of a shadow over the legitimacy of this thing and who's taking it seriously and who's not. That's all.
Yeah, and there are 272 eligible voters, 249 took part, and I'm
That's
sure...
That's another thing, 30-something didn't even vote.
Yeah, and I'm sure out of that 249 that did vote, there are people that book is that's what they're looking at.
Streaming wasn't in here, who won the Hollywood Starlet. Animal Kingdom wasn't in here. And more. There's more. I mean, it's just, and for those of you that say, oh, well, maybe because Authenticity didn't win a great, funny proposition, who made 4 starts. She won the Fleur-de-Lis. Great. That's terrific. Her last start was in June. She somehow finds her way into this thing. And Authenticity, I mean, it's embarrassing is what it is.
Yeah, and you wonder if maybe they should put together some kind of set rules to get into the book. A certain number of graded stakes victories get you in. And
with online, you could have gone to DRF to the media section, and there was all of these divisions are laid out. Online, there's unlimited space. So if it's a question of space and printing, and who even needs this in this day and age? What's the point of even preparing a printed thing? Just put them online and, put every horse that hit the board in a graded
that's
state.
actually a good point, because if you need the book, maybe you shouldn't be a voter.
Exactly. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. There's a couple of other little spots where, there's some inequities in this system. Ms. Direction, who is a very nice mare.
Yeah, she's just in a quirky no man's land.
Is she a turf horse? Is she a turf mare? Is she a sprinter? For me, she was a sprinter. I put her third in the actually, I put her third in turf horse because she had run the 2-mile turf stakes and won one of them, and of course she came east. A lot of people voted, or enough people voted her in the sprint category. She ended up as a finalist in both female turf and in female sprinter. So I don't know. There's these discussions every year. Is it that important? Probably not, but it does mean something.
Yeah, and it is nice to the connections to get that honor of being a finalist and a nominee, and so if you get left out, some of those folks. All right, let's also touch on, they came out this week with the year-end numbers, handle and purses for the United States, national numbers, and wagering on the U.S. races. The handle this year was up, that's a positive, it was up incrementally, 0.06%. But it's notable because at the same time they put out the national year-long numbers, they put out the national numbers for December. And so that 0.06% becomes more important when you look at December. They went down over 10%.
Well, there was a lot of race days.
And that's what I was going to say.
Way down race days, a lot of cancellations.
Parks, I think, was a big part of that.
Not that there's that much handle there.
Well, 10 days is going to be pretty significant. And also, it was at a point where you lose some dates earlier in the year, racetracks, you can kind of add a race here or there. This was right at the end of the year. They lost 10 days. There's no making that up.
That's true.
And then I'll tie it in also. I think part of that may have also been tied into fairgrounds and the number of turf races they lost. And I'm tying it in because it was announced just over the past couple of days. Fairgrounds has canceled 4 stakes races and reduced purses on other stakes on their schedule this year because of their decline in handle so far early in the meet. And I think a lot of that's tied into they've had their weather woes. You know, we're getting the winter weather up here, and they're getting not temperature-wise, but they're getting winter weather down there too with rain, which has really affected the turf course and their turf racing.
Churchill Downs is coming under a lot of criticism here, and it's because the turf course has now, this problem has been stretching on into now, I think, a 4th year, basically, the last 2 years, just a complete mess. And frankly, we're going to talk to Frank Miramati in a little bit at Oaklawn Park. It's their opening weekend. They're off to a tremendous start. And part of it is going to be not just because of people focusing their attention away from fairgrounds. I think horsemen, too. I mean, you've got a really vibrant group of trainers. And the amazing thing about the Oaklawn situation, there's no turf course. There's not going to be any turf racing in March and April there. They don't have turf at Oaklawn. So the fact that there are so many trainers, Mark Cassie with a string there, for instance, this year, and then all of the names that you're familiar with. Kellen Gorder actually has gone down there as well with a string. And then the usual cast at Oaklawn. But Fairgrounds, this turf course, they tried to do some things over the off season, but it isn't the same as basically tearing the whole thing up and reseeding like they did in Monmouth. At Monmouth, they made a special effort because they discovered that the hedgerow was sucking all the old hedges that were around the racetrack. They were sucking so much moisture out of the track, it was resulting in the hardness, the rest of the grass course not getting enough moisture. So they ended up having to take that out, and they rebuilt it, and it's made a big difference. And they got to do something at Fairgrounds because this is a bad situation.
And I had Brian Spencer on the other day from Fairgrounds, and he brought up the point I hadn't even thought about before. But Fairgrounds, New Orleans, it's below sea level,
right,
which makes the drainage problem even a little more of a problem down there. But they've had a funny situation with the past week or so, where they've had a couple of days at least where the weather looked pretty good, and they would get one turf race off, and then the jockeys would come back and say,
they're sinking. The horses are sinking down too far in the grass.
All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some races from yesterday that are worth paying a little bit of attention to, certainly on the Triple Crown Trail. And then again, a little later on, Mike Welch from the Daily Racing Forum, Frank Miramati from Oaklawn Park. All of that when Loose on the Lead continues.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Go Zephyr kicking clear, and Go Zephyr is pulling away impressively.
Hysterical Lady, Ginger Punch to win it.
And it's Wilco in front, and he's going to pull off a huge upset here.
But it's Round Pond going on to take the distaff.
Awesome again. Sire of 10 Grade 1 winners, 4 Breeders' Cup champions, and 4 multimillionaires, standing at Adena Springs.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTV.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTV.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Loose on the Lead for this Sunday morning. Seth Merrow and Steve Bick, as promised before the break, we'll take a look at some racing action. Got a couple from Gulfstream Park that we'll save for Mike Welch. But yesterday out at Santa Anita, they're kicking off their Triple Crown Trail. It was the Sham yesterday at Santa Anita. Grade 3 event, $100,000 purse. Again, obviously Triple Crown Trail. It's 3-year-olds. They're going a mile. A short field of only 4, and the betting public went for the Baffert Pegram horse, Midnight Hawk. Midnight Hawk is going to be the number 6 horse that you'll see here with Mike Smith on board. 2-5 favorite. Christo, the 2-1 second choice, is going to be challenging there on the rail. And it looks like here Midnight Hawk is going to run away, but Christo doesn't give up too easily. However, again, as you get down closer to the wire, Midnight Hawk has just a little bit more oomph. And so Midnight Hawk now out in Southern California, a 3-year-old to watch.
Well, and this is a horse that people were looking forward to. One of the sidebars, one of the really fun sidebars to this is the ownership group that is involved, including Joel Quenneville from the Chicago Blackhawks and Mike Tice, the former football coach, or is he still a football coach? Is he still coaching?
I think so, but I'm not.
Atlanta, maybe? Where is he? I don't know. Anyway, Mike Tice hit a $100,000 pick 6 at Del Mar this summer. Anyway, it's another celebrity, mainstream sports type ownership, along with the Jim Rome's sacred belief, shared belief. So Midnight Hawk, I thought this was okay. The unfortunate part of this race was Corey Owens, the Arizona bred, the brother of Obango. I was really looking forward to seeing him run back. That's Top Fortitude, who was so impressive breaking his maiden. He's just had a little. Owens said it was just a little enough of a hoof issue that he wanted to scratch and wait. I don't know if he'll wait for the Lewis or if he'll go for an allowance spot or what he'll do. But watch for when Top Fortitude returns. And of course, the next step at California will be, at Santa Anita, will be the Bob Lewis, February 8th, I believe. And that'll be Shared Belief's return, of course, vying for the Clips Award with Havana, most likely, I would think, in the 2-year-old male.
Yeah, and coming up this weekend, nice weekend on the Triple Crown Trail down in New Orleans with the LeCompte, a Gold Hawk, who I kind of like. Albano is going to be running. Again, that's coming up this Saturday. And I said Mike Pegram horse. Pegram was the breeder, as you say. The owners are
and he's involved. He's involved in the owner. I mean, it's his Silks.
Silks, yeah.
Hill and Dale, I think. John Secura too is. It's a big group, which makes for happy winner's circles.
Oh, absolutely. And anytime you get some of those higher profile owners, it helps perhaps draw some mainstream attention as well.
Absolutely.
We were talking a little bit before we went on the air. Huffington Post article gave a little nod to Saratoga, and you were going to tie that into the state and tourism and some of those issues.
Tina noticed this morning. The Huffington Post had a top 10 main streets in America, and Saratoga Springs is included. Broadway, part of the coverage, and gosh, what a nice endorsement for Saratoga, and of course the August place to be for everybody except for Governor Cuomo, who in a speech on tourism, on New York State tourism this week, didn't mention Saratoga or horse racing. Now, it only contributes $200 million to the state's coffers and to businesses in the state, so it's not really that important. I mean, because $200 million, what's that in the scheme of things? Not important enough for the Cuomo administration and speechwriters to acknowledge what Saratoga and what NYRA and what racing means to the state. There's just one smoke signal after another as to what Albany's real long-term interest is in one of the state's signature tourist industries. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it is remarkable, because I think if somebody put together a list of tourist attractions in the state, as far as people visiting, as far as money spent, Saratoga has to be prominent on that list.
You would think.
So to ignore horse
You would
racing in Saratoga is certainly a little bit of a head scratcher. All right, anything else you want to touch on before we head to the bottom of the hour?
We could maybe because we're going to concentrate on Gulfstream with Mike Welsh and then Frank Miramati with Oaklawn's opening, I want to mention that Baratti on Friday, race 2. We don't have the video, but if you missed Baratti, here is a barrage of Kieran McLaughlin, first-time Lasix runners. Yesterday, of course, he hits with 2 more of them. That was El Nawi and Macaroon. Double Whammy didn't run so good, frankly, and neither did North Slope down at Gulfstream. But Baratti, very nice performance. Now, granted, Friday you may have had a gold rail. As Andy Serling pointed out, it was clear the inside was the place to be. But that did not really take away from the powerhouse performance of this Darley runner, homebred out of Surf Song, who, of course, happens to be the sister of Midshipman, among others. A very nice family. And, of course, this was part of the group of horses from Stoneside, from the McNairs that Darley bought. This is a Medagliadoro colt, actually an April foal. So he is announcing himself pretty good, and yet another impressive horse on the Aqueduct Inner in the winter. And very clever of Kieran McLaughlin to leave the kinds of horses the last few years. El Nawi, of course, was one last year. It's Tricky is another one, of course, the wonderful 3-year-old filly from 2 years ago. The Aqueduct Inner, for those not paying attention, the quality has been really good. The races have been very bettable. Tomorrow we have our first Monday card. If you haven't looked at it yet, it's really strong, and it's a nice sequence. I print it out. Sometimes I'll just print out the early pick 5 or the late pick 4. I'm going to have to look at all 9 today to talk about tomorrow. But Baratti, Mike Luzzi getting himself a nice 3-year-old.
Yeah, and I think that Monday card at Aqueduct this winter is going to be a blockbuster. It's
going to be a big hit.
There are slim pickings on Mondays at this time of year, so we'll keep our eyes on the handle figures
Did you talk to Jacobson at all, Story at all?
No.
Well, this is a tough story, and it's not going to spend a lot of time here, but the situation, there's a real growing discontent and amount of attention being pointed in toward the Jacobson barn and the way he is churning and burning up horses, claiming, he's playing the game exceedingly aggressive, getting horses, then dropping them in and shoving them through, running them, for the purse money and dropping them down if they get claimed and they win. That all the so better. I mean, this is kind of an old school approach, and it may not work, frankly, going forward, because there's a much different sentiment and a much different environment in which we're dealing. And, there's been plenty of focus and attention on the Jacobson barn. They've been under observation and all this. And so for people who say, oh, they're obviously cheating, I've got no, there's no comment on that, but they've been certainly watched carefully. In the meantime, having horses drop and then run through Suffolk and run through Charlestown or Laurel at lower levels and then showing up in kill pens, this is an issue. And the Jacobson barn seemingly, and the partners involved, seemingly have real kind of been read the riot act, I think, and are cognizant of what they better do here. Otherwise, I think there's going to be even more attention and more focus, and they've opened themselves up for criticism, and the whole industry suffers under those circumstances. So doing the right thing isn't just a tagline. You got to be vigilant, and we've had to reiterate this over the last couple of years. This is not an environment to operate the way, in some cases, the game did for decades and or centuries. So this is a story that's sort of percolating and is not going to go away.
Yeah, and if you're racing that often and at the top of the standings meet after meet after meet in the entire year, you got to be wearing the big boy pants, and you got to realize you're going to get some scrutiny. Yeah. And as you say, it is a different world with social media. We've had plenty of criticism of it, and I think some of the criticism leveled at Jacobson has not been warranted necessarily. But
some is and some isn't.
Yeah, exactly. But that's social media, and that's the world in the 21st century. So you're gonna hear it, and you're gonna hear it loud and clear. And as you say, you have to react to that and realize that we're in a day and age now where social media forms some perceptions, and perceptions then become reality for some people. And you have to live in the world of the 21st century and maybe change some of the ways you do things. All right, we'll take our next break. When we come back, Mike Welch from the Daily Racing Forum. We'll talk a little Florida racing right after this. I'm Seth Merrill. Join me weekdays at 10 for Racing Across America. We'll look at important races from around the country, get insight from top handicappers and analysts, and preview the upcoming week in racing. That's Racing Across America, weekdays at 10, right here on the OTB TV network.
I didn't want to get just any degree after high school.
Horse racing has always been my passion.
I was already a lawyer.
When I was young, my dad took me to the races. The sound of the crowd. I still remember.
I'm 40, and I don't want to stay in a career I don't love.
I want to follow my passion.
Follow your passion at the University of Arizona Racetrack Industry Program.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night school in the buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this Sunday morning. Really a terrific day of racing yesterday at Gulfstream. Kind of a day where it felt like, all right, this is it. Now the winter is really rolling. And of course, Mike Welch of the Racing Forum presides over all of the racing, whether it's the serious winter or the less serious summer. Mike, good morning.
Actually, during the less serious summer, I was at Saratoga for most of it,
That's
so that
true.
was a good thing.
Mike, we saw some good things yesterday. We'll talk about Constitution's interesting debut in a minute, but really early on the card, in the second race, we saw WinStar's Revolutionary come back, hadn't been seen since the Belmont, third in the Derby, and you were trying to beat him, I tried to beat him. The interesting thing was that it was actually Falling Sky that ran big. We're going to watch the stretch run, and Revolutionary had to really work to get past Terra Nova's runner.
Yeah, I mean, Falling Sky got loose on the lead, and it's George Weaver now, Falling Sky. But Falling Sky got loose on the lead. Surprisingly, I thought Revron would show more speed, but he chased. Honorable Dylan run horrible. And Revolutionary kind of grinded him down. Yeah, he had to work pretty hard to get there. I mean, that was one of the reasons, several reasons why you really wanted to try to bet against this 1-5 shot. I mean, you knew he was going to drop back off the pace over a speed track. He was prepping for something down the road. As a matter of fact, Todd Pletcher told me afterwards in the winner's circle that he kind of reminded Javier that this is a prep for his next start. So I guess that was to tell him, just don't beat him up and empty the tank here, because we got bigger fish to fry in about a month, so even less than a month. So, it was like I said, it was a workmanlike effort. He asserted his class, and he got the job done. And now he's going to move on to the Don Handicap. So, Todd seemed pleased afterwards, and he got what he said. I got what I wanted out of the race. So we'll see. It's going to be obviously a lot tougher field, and with one under his belt, he's supposed to run better next time. And going a little longer, he should be able to be a little close. He was closer yesterday, actually, than you would have thought to the pace, especially coming out of the gate a step slow. But if Todd's pleased, then we all should be pleased, I guess.
Got to also ask, before we move on to the debut of Constitution, want to ask about Viramundo, because he was traveling best late for Marty Wolfson, and I'm curious if they're intended for the Don as well, because I like the way he was motoring down the stretch.
This horse is eligible for a 2 other than. I can't see this horse going in the Don. I think that was an optical illusion. I mean, he was coming on at the end, but the last eighth or quarter of a mile of that race was pretty slow. Revron was stopping. Admiral Dillon had already stopped. I would be shocked if this horse went in the Don handicap.
Well, in terms of a fig, I think, 93 buyer for Revolutionary coming out of this.
Right. So, again, it was a stepping stone, and he took the right step. I can't believe people would take 1 to 5 on this horse with all the question marks about him, but, they cashed, so what are you going to do?
Let's talk about Constitution. We're going to watch, and I'm not sure what part of the video we've got, but he started poorly, and he spots the field a handful of lengths, and I couldn't tell, actually. I got to watch the replay again myself from the start, because I couldn't tell if Castellano really rushed him back up or if he dragged Castellano to the lead, but from what transpired at that point was basically a 6+ furlong drive, and Constitution debuts pretty impressively.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see the start of those races behind the stalls out there. You got to watch the head on camera. You really can't get a good perspective of how badly they break. But he broke several lengths behind the field. I'd say 5 or 6 behind Juba, and he did. He just dragged Castellano up the inside. I'm shocked that jockey Alan Garcia didn't make it a little more difficult for him to get up inside there. Didn't intimidate him a little bit or shut him. Go over to the rail and make him come outside. That was an edge that Constitution got that he probably shouldn't have. But give him all the credit in the world to overcome that kind of start and outgame a horse who had already started. He's getting Lasix for the first time. Juba did drift out a little bit at the end, and if you read Mike Vesey's comments on this horse during his works, he did the same thing during his workout. So he was spot on in this race. He had Constitution as definitely the one to beat, and Juba to be aware that this horse drifts a little bit at the end, coming to the wire in his works, and did so again in his race, and probably caught him. If he kept a straight line, he probably would have been. He might have been able to hold Constitution off. But I thought it was a huge effort for him. I don't know how far this horse is going to go down the line, but you really have to give him a lot of credit for his first race to overcome a start like that.
And behind him, Greyfell for Bill Mott. Not a bad effort. There were a bunch of firsters that probably deserve to be watched for later on, for next starts and for stretch outs. Horses like Indy's Legacy, the Cool Coleman brother for Pat Byrne and the Sanfords. Certainly a horse that probably wants 2 turns. Got to ask, Mike, before we talk about a couple of other spots, how about the upset by John Mazza coming in with the Jersey-bred first-time starter in the anchor leg of the pick 5 and the pick 4, the 5th race. City Squire 39-1 runs by them all, and there was a collective groan, at least from me. I glossed over him.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you none of the clockers cashed on him either. He hadn't shown that much in the morning. As a matter of fact, his workmate from the last 2 gate works is in for 12-5 in the first race today. This horse is a little better in the works, but not that much. Obviously, by the price, I don't think anyone expected that. But he came flying at the end in a race that, really collapsed late. But there were several other horses you would have thought that might have had a little more kick than City Squire. So it was a shock all the way around. And a good effort by Broadway Zen. I talked to Dale after the race, and he thought this horse would run improved. He was dropping in class. For the second time, he said he had some trouble in his first start for 50, and he thought he might run well yesterday at a price, and he did.
Got to ask about one other horse that ran by everybody, that terrific maiden special going 1 mile and an 1/8. And here was Can't Help Believing, Graham Motion, who's suddenly caught fire. He won a race at Tampa the other day and has got a bunch of horses that continue to run well. And this was Alan Garcia. I kind of was reaching everywhere except with this horse, made a big mistake missing him. But this was an interesting group, and of course Blarp was stuck down inside. Edgar Prado just marries himself to the rail and the hedges, and when it works, and when it doesn't, he doesn't look so good.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't knock a rider for doing that, trying to save ground, especially in these big fields. He was down. He broke from post 2, and he just took his shot from down in there. Look, the same thing happened with Summer Front. If he doesn't get through, then you might criticize Bravo, but he did what he had to do, and he got the right trip, and he was able to win. Blob not quite as fortunate, but I don't think he would have been able to kick on late with Can't Help Believing. First time Blinkers, first time Lasix. That's 3 wins here in 2 days for Graham Motion. He won 2 here on Friday as well, so obviously he's woken up. And I was watching the race with Dale Romans, and no doubt the disappointment on his face when the field left the 8th pole. It looked like he was home free, and then you saw this blur coming down the middle of the track from where we were standing. You could see him coming, and you could tell that this horse was going to overtake Notability. So a tough break for Dale. He had several seconds yesterday at big prices, but Can't Help Believing a big, much improved effort off his first U.S. start.
I got to also think, Mike, that downtown Leroy Brown, who we talked on Friday and you were pushing as a potential upsetter, he took them a long way and is going to be obscured when you look at this chart. He may want to shorten up a little bit because that was not a bad effort out of him. For any
I said I knew he was asking too much for him to go right from a 6 furlong race where he stopped like that to go a mile and an eighth. But I really wish they had thrown this horse in 5/8 on the turf the first time. You could just see from his works that grass is what he wanted. It was kind of a wasted race if you were, a bettor. But I'm sure he got a lot out of the race. It'll be interesting to see if they, maybe shorten him up at least back to 7.5 or a mile next time. Even at 7.5 or a mile, he might have been pretty dangerous. First time over the turf, but a mile and an eighth. You got to have patience, and you just have to wait for the right spots, and sometimes not take the first spot that comes up.
Mike, you mentioned you and your partner Mike Vesey do the morning workouts. Great Clockers Report information available at the Daily Racing Forum. I just wanted to get your opinion. A couple of high-profile workouts yesterday. Mucho Macho Man, Groupie Doll. Give us an update on how they looked. 2
different works. Mucho Macho Man. He's had several works. He's on his toes. He's ready to run. He won a sharp half mile in 47 and 4. Finished well. We had a very strong headwind coming up the stretch, and he pierced through that in 23 and 4 and did it easily. And the work was purposely designed to keep him off the rail and out in what might have been the better going. But he was a little wide into the stretch. Galloped out nicely. This horse is ready to roll next week, as opposed to Groupie Doll, who's only had 1 3/8 work on the farm prior to coming in here. So it was a very easy half mile yesterday. 49 and change. She was in hand. I got a little tired at the end, as expected, but Buff Badley said he was happy with it. She got a little hot prior to the work, but if memory serves, she got a little hot prior to a couple of her works out in California before the Breeders' Cup. So Buff was happy, but she's got a little ways to go. So I'm sure that the Hurricane Birdie will be the race they're going to point for. They'll skip the race in California, which comes up in a couple of weeks, and wait for the Hurricane Birdie, which is now on the same day as the Don Handicap and the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap, so it's going to be quite a card that Sunday.
Got to also, Mike, as we wrap up, mention the 2 stakes yesterday, and of course Lee moves over to the Mott Barn and instantly wins a graded stake, and he looked good doing it.
Yeah, he really did, and that gave jockey Louis Saez his 1,000th victory of his riding career. It's still a very brief riding career. Bill said afterwards that he had actually, was looking at a couple of grass races to start him out here, and then decided after taking a peek at a couple of his dirt races on his form, why not give him one shot on the dirt and see where we stand with him on dirt before, putting him on a surface we know he can handle. And the results were so positive. He had a little gleam in his eye when I mentioned the Don Handicap to him. So it's a possibility we could see Lee in the Don Handicap.
Very nice. And, of course, Summer Front, who everybody loves to kind of bet against and try to beat. He couldn't have been ridden with more confidence. Joe Bravo with his 3rd stake win in 2 weeks at Gulfstream.
Yeah, if the hole doesn't open, then he gets criticized, but the hole did open, and once Summer Front got through there, she's just a better horse than Tetra Dracum, who got away with a soft pace on the lead, as I thought he might in a field lacking any speed. Looked like he was home free when he turned into the stretch, but once Summer Front got loose, when it turned a foot, he showed, just surged right by the leader and won impressively. This is a nice horse. He's got several grade 3 wins, and I think this now is his first grade 2. He should have won the citation out in Hollywood Park because he had to come around instead of coming up the rail. And he could wind up in the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap here next month.
Well, and today, kind of a quiet day, Mike, but there are a couple of good maiden races, a couple of interesting groups of fillies. Then there's a group of older horses, including a sibling, Pink Nighty, a sister of Mass Media for Eddie Keneally, and also you got the sister of Dr. Fong in here for... I think is it for Pletcher? Yeah, Renard's Lapin. Been trying to find the winner's circle, and there's a decent allowance. Any push today?
No, I nothing really stood out to me on the card. You also have In Tune for Pleasure in the 6th race, who's a half to Affirma Teeth, who I believe won his debut here on the grass by about a half a pole here 4 or 5 years ago. Also, Chad Brown has a nice-looking first-timer named Lone Guarantee. No, it's just after yesterday's card, it's a little bit of a letdown, actually, but it's 11 races and 11 competitive. A lot of them competitive. You got Medal Count going to the grass for the first time, and he's been working pretty well. I think he's going to be an interesting horse today. He's 8-1 on the line, but I think you'll be lucky to get half that. And Branded Hand, who is actually the morning line favorite, go watch the replay of that last race. What a brutal trip he got. His buyer numbers are a little weak, but I think with a trip, he could be very dangerous in here as well.
There's a horse at 20-1. I don't know if that's going to hold either in that race with Medal Count. Quasar Power from Mark Cassie, finally getting on the grass. Hasn't been seen since November at Woodbine. Going to be a big price. And Garcia from Off the Pace, maybe, with this Tail of the Cat out of Ghost Dancing, an interesting colt.
Yeah, Mark said this is kind of an experiment here, putting him on the grass for the first time. He isn't really sure what to expect. He scratched his head a little bit over that last race. He thought it was very disappointing off a pretty nice, what he thought was a pretty nice maiden win. So he's putting him on the grass. He thinks he'll handle the grass, but he really isn't sure what to expect.
Well, we always know what to expect from Mike Welsh of the Daily Racing Form. Top coverage, great analysis from the mornings. DRF.com/Clocker. Follow Mike, DRF Welsh on Twitter. Mike, thanks so much.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Mike Welsh, everybody. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll go to Oaklawn Park, where Frank Miramati is going to join us, the voice, the man of 1,000 voices, but the voice of Oaklawn Park. We'll talk about their terrific start. They're 2 days in, and another nice card today, including Ride on Curlin in that allowance 6 today at Hot Springs. Back after this on Loose on the Lead.
It's more than just a sports bar. It's Stadium Cafe. Located at 389 Broadway in Saratoga, it's the place to be for great times and great food. Their menu features everything from gourmet entrees to your favorite wraps and sandwiches. Or maybe you just want to grab a beer and catch the game. So what can be better than that? How about 2 Stadium Cafes? There's also the Westside Stadium, right up the road at 112 Congress Street. Same great menu, same great service. Whether you're hanging at the bar or just relaxing outside on their spacious covered patio, you'll always leave knowing you'll be back again.
We love, above all, the staff. We love Dave Harmon, and the food is fantastic.
Not 1, but 2. 112 Congress Street, 389 Broadway. Guaranteed to be a home run.
Stately Victor, final furlong of the Toyota Bluegrass, runs right by Patio Prado. Alan Garcia and Stately Victor, a 40-1 upset.
Dinah Zappa holding on. Dinah Zappa win.
Horse of the Year Ghost Zapper, sire of 9 new stakes horses and 5 new stakes winners, including Grade 1 winner Stately Victor in 2010, standing at Adena Springs.
morning. We'll go from Gulfstream to Oak Lawn Park. And, of course, Friday, the kickoff to the meet. It'll bring you into the spring. It always picks up momentum as the season goes on, and they're off to a great start. And, of course, Frank Miramati calls all the action and does plenty of analysis as well. Delighted to bring Frank Miramati to Loose on the Lead.
Thank you very much for having me, gentlemen.
Frank, a lot of fun as the season gets started. 50-cent corned beef sandwiches flying over the counter. And, of course, the racing, not so bad either. We've had the 2 early stakes, the Dixie Belle and the 5th season. And, boy, 2 prominent horsemen down at Arkansas, Cody Autry and not Lynn Whiting, actually, but the Mr. Sella winning with the other horse yesterday in the 5th season.
The other horse being Drogue, trained by Mike Johnson. And I'll tell you what, if this was an uncoupled entry, that horse would have paid $30 minimum, but you end up getting 3. You could tell going into the far turn, Cyber Seeker was not turning in his best performance, but Drogue sure did. A homebred for Mr. Sella, and as you can imagine, everyone was very happy yesterday with that big W. And a horse that was running for a $30,000 tag last year obviously has turned it around and loves this track.
And trainer Mike Johnson got a little choked up in the winner's circle.
Yes, in fact, we made sure we put that on the replay show because the other trainers like to give him a hard time when he gets too emotional. So we put him right out there. So in case anyone missed it, they got to see it again last night.
That's hysterical. You've also got, in addition to the standard things that we look forward to, it seems like the 3-year-old group of horses that'll work their way through the Smarty Jones and into the Southwest and so forth to the Arkansas Derby. It seems like there's a pronounced group of prominent 3-year-olds. It started on Friday with Bourbon Eyes.
That was a great performance. I'll tell you what, I was wondering whether he could follow up a 1-turn race. I know it was 7/8, but from winning off the pace at a huge price, I didn't know if that was some sort of fluke. I'll tell you what, that horse was awesome. He tried it out. The horse that I really liked in there, Son of Dixie, is a good-looking horse, too. He had his ears up going to the starting gate, and Bourbon Eyes went by him like he was standing still. That is a horse with a very bright future. And I'll tell you what, I guess the angle so far here, if you can find progeny of Tiz Wonderful in the nightcap, you can't be beat at Oakland. They're 2 for 2 now.
Got to also mention, we should, from Friday, the horse that you and I talked about on the radio briefly, Thundergram, gets the elusive maiden win for Mark Casse and for Jack Oxley, and that was a nice win. It gets the Silva off to a good start.
It was, and it was a perfect ride. You know, when you are a new arrival in town, you have to come in with your A game, and Thundergram got a perfect trip right behind the leaders, and I think that's a race that will produce some next out winners. I think Bro Rodrigo, who ran 3rd in there, I don't think he'll be a maiden much longer. Wizardly was pretty couple on the inside. I think that race will prove to be a decent one.
Well, we also need to mention, speaking of opening day, the Norberto Arroyo story. And Norberto Arroyo continues to try to work his way back to the upper echelon of the riding world. Spent a good portion of last year riding in Kentucky and very steadily seems to be reestablishing himself and got off to a tremendous start. 4 wins on Friday, 1 yesterday, and today with red-hot Cody Autry, another 6 mounts.
You know what? I'll tell you, I met him for the first time at the end of the day. He was about to do a news interview. He was so grateful for the opportunity, and, you know, he delivered. Let's face it, he was a perfect 4 for 4 on opening day. The old expression, you don't have a second chance to make a first impression. And he did it, and he certainly caught a lot of people's attention with that. And I wish him well, and we're happy to have him over here. I know that, you know, for me, I was trying to think, there was a horse years ago in New York on the turf that he came through with, and he was telling me he's had a lot of good winners on the turf course. He's known for that. He won't have that opportunity here, but he's proving the surface doesn't matter.
Got to mention, too, that yesterday, at the end of the day, an exciting finish with Arroyo and another Cody Autry winner. This was Paganol. And what do we know of that group? Because there were a few horses in here as well that had some, had some back form that we were looking toward, including Long Station, that was familiar to pretty much anybody following the 3-year-olds. Paganol with the nose win.
Yes, he won by a nose. I'll tell you, the horse out of that race, if I could own one of them, would be Sweet Strategy. What a beast he is. He lost by a nose. He looked beautiful. He did before the race. I have a feeling when that horse stretches out, he is going to be ultra tough. And then, you know, Long Station, as you mentioned, he rallied well. He had run right behind Bourbon Eyes before that. And Paganol really didn't break that quickly, and he was ultra game. There was a horse in there named Discipline. If you saw the head-on during the inquiry, Discipline was in a very tight spot between horses, actually tried to take a piece right out of the neck of Paganol because he was not comfortable in there. He tried to bite him. So it was quite an entertaining race, and I guess if you're watching on simulcast, you saw a couple of races yesterday that make it clear. Remember, the inside has a distinct edge. It's a very tough camera angle, and the inside in close photos will get the edge as opposed to most tracks when it looks like the outside. That was a very solid nightcap.
And Frank, you talked about street strategy, Calvin Burrell on board. We also talked about Drogue, a very nice winner of the stakes yesterday. Calvin Burrell on both of those horses, and Calvin back after the break. You have a nice, fun little jockey colony down there. Channing Hill, Jeremy Rose, folks are up in the Northeast familiar with both of them, but also some new names on the trainer side as well. We've already alluded to Mark Cassidy. So a good group of jockeys and trainers down there at Oaklawn this year.
No question. I mean, they keep coming in. I could tell you they could fill a whole other barn area if the possibility existed. Hall of Famer Jack Van Berg is now on the scene as well. Jeff Bondi is back from the West Coast. It's just so exciting, and we have full field. Everyone's having a great time. We had perfect weather yesterday. The track, obviously, from the times you could tell it's a little bit slow, but keep in mind that the track was good, and we've had a lot of weather issues of late. That track is going to be much faster as the meet progresses. And I know they've got a great drainage system to be able to, have the track in such tip-top shape for those first few days.
And we should
very excited.
We should also remind people a new wagering menu too.
Yes, and I think the fans have been asking and begging for it. And as I've noted, if it was up to Mr. Stella, which of course everything is up to Mr. Stella, but if it was his way only, it would be a daily double and maybe a couple of exactas. He's not a big fan of exotic wagers, but now this year, starting with the second race, instead of having just a few pick threes, we have rolling pick threes. There's now an early pick four. It paid $7,500 the first day on races 2 through 5. Then the late pick four as well. And there's 10-cent superfecta wagering available whenever there's enough entries. I think it's 8 or more. You can have superfecta wagering now. So they've really, answered, the emails and the fan requests, and they've expanded that menu significantly.
Got to talk about today for a second, Frank, because another 3-year-old, this one with plenty of form and class coming in. That is Ride On Curlin for Bill Gowan, the Curlin Bay colt that we saw in the fall in New York, in fact, in the Champagne, when he was a good third there, rallying behind Honor Code in Havana. And talk about this 6th race today, because I think it's probably one of the most important races of the day anywhere in the country.
It really is. It's a great race. And I'll tell you what, Cody Autry's got a nice little hand in there as well. Guns Loaded, who I actually watched winning at Del Mar when he broke his maiden, and a horse named Rivers Run Deep. Those are the 2 early entries in there. But Ride On Curlin will be the favorite on the strength of that great effort that you mentioned in the Champagne. And, he was the favorite in the Iroquois. So you're talking about a pretty good horse to end up in Allowance Company this afternoon. That's what's so fun. We have so many horses on the ground. There are people chomping at the bit to run their horses, either firsters or horses with limited experience. And today's 6th race, no exception in there. I'm looking forward to calling and watching that race.
Got to also mention that there's the maiden race for fillies, and it goes as the 7th. It's a very good late pick 4 today at Oaklawn, and just because she's an absolute favorite of mine, I see Phil Sims has got the second-time starter by Sky Mesa in here. That's Cha-Cha Ridge. This is the sister of Ha-Cha-Cha.
Yeah, she's a big price, too. She's 12-1. The horse I picked in there is the 8 Piper Jade. I think Piper Jade, might have a little bit of an edge because she has some good speed. She'll be in striking range. And I must say, I am probably the last guy that's ever going to mention any kind of biases or edges, but I definitely noticed yesterday that as the day was progressing, horses that were on or near the lead had a distinct edge. And I think as the track was drying out, you might want to pay more attention to horses because the opening day they were coming from well out of it. But yesterday I think the front runners were getting their fair share, and I think you want to have a horse that's well spotted early. I think it can't hurt you. Let's put it that way. Ultimately, I always believe the best horse should overcome most of those situations, but any little edge will help you.
Frank, any special plan in today's second race? I know that normally we don't talk about $7,500 claiming races for Archie breds. However, Beautiful Rainbows is now 11 years old. As of January 1st, she makes her 102nd start in this spot. She's second choice at 3-1 for Joe Martin.
By the way, I put all my picks out there. If you want to torture yourself, go to Oaklawn.com. under racing, and I picked Beautiful Rainbows on Top. I love this mare. I have enjoyed calling her. I always pick her, and so what I'll do when I introduce the pick, say, look, I'm biased. I really love this mare. She keeps on firing. She gives you everything she has, and now she's back with her Arkansas-bred friend. I have to pick her on top, absolutely.
I love it. Speaking of notable names, I also see that Wayne Catalano continues along, and Amy's Dinny debuts as a 5-year-old in that featured third-level allowance 9th. This is a mare at this point. You know, she had such potential as a 3-year-old, stakes placed, graded stakes placed, and then is sort of plateaued. And it seems that Wayne Catalano kind of working along to get Amy's Dinny right.
She's a very nice filly. I mean, this horse, when she was trained by Ron Moquett, was giving the, I can't think of her name, the undefeated Donnie K horse early in her career. I can't believe I'm forgetting her name right now. Was giving her all she wanted and then some in her 3-year-old campaign. And Amy's Dinny likes this track. I just think I'm so looking forward to seeing Apropos. Of all the races last year, that was the most impressive victory. When she was coming to the wire that day, Victor LeBron barely asked her at the 8th pole, and she took off like you could not even imagine. In fact, when they were coming toward the wire, I said, Apropos is going to win by about 7. She kept widening. She won by more than 10 in that race. If she comes back even close to what that was, they'll be battling for second. I've been looking forward to seeing this mare come back to running, and I'm glad to see it's happening here at Oakland.
Well, in Hot Springs, they look forward to the racing as we do here in the Saratoga area all year long. It is underway. It's off to a great start, great handle numbers as well, and of course the on-track attendance, which is always strong. And when they come to Oakland, they bring their money.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, the pools have been outstanding. Look at the win pools in every race. It's incredible. We're getting great coverage. We're on TV everywhere. So this is, a lot of attention on these signals, on the signal here at Oakland, and we're just trying to put on the show and let everyone have a great time. Nancy Holthus, who most people know as Nancy Uri, has joined us. She's doing reports from the paddock. We work together on the replay show. We're just all having a great time out here, and we're privileged to have the opportunity to work at such a great place.
And a privilege for us to have Frank Miramati join us on opening weekend at Oaklawn Park. Frank, continued success. We'll talk as the meet progresses.
Thank you so much, guys.
The great Frank Miramati.
Frank Miramati.
You can follow Frank on Twitter, too, Frank Miramati.
All right, that'll bring us to the end of the show. We're running a little late, but we'll wind things up.
We started
for
late.
Loose on, well,
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.